And thinking about this recovery, in an interview last week, former chair of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, suggested that GDP could decline by 30% for the second quarter and unemployment could be up to 13%. That's for the beginning of the month, but we've seen numbers go higher. And just as of this past week, I think it was over 22 million workers who have filed for unemployment benefits. But what do numbers like this in terms of shrinking GDP and increasing unemployment mean for a recovering economy in the future?
Well, so obviously 22 million is a ton of is a lot, right? So I mentioned earlier 160
Mm-hmm.
million people is about the labor force. So you divide 22
Mm-hmm.
by 160, or about 14%. Add in the existing unemployment, we're close to 20% unemployment, which is a ton. And so in the recovery, what we saw after the financial crisis is that we saw these unemployment the unemployment rate come down very slowly, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
Really, bit by bit growing back to where we were before. Now, in the current situation, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep we're trying to keep demand from completely crashing by keeping, by being pretty generous in dealing with the people who've lost their jobs. And we're trying to keep the supply side healthy by keeping firms afloat, as we discussed, through the payroll
Mm-hmm.
protection program and various lending facilities. If we carry out both of those things the way we are trying to, then I think we should be able to see a much faster recovery. If, on the other hand, we end up with a lot of businesses, going under anyway, with, not reopening until well after these additional unemployment benefits have run out, if we do not provide additional funding to state and local governments, then they will start firing a ton of people too and cutting back on services. And so, if we make those mistakes, then we'll have a much more drawn out recovery. But I think in the optimistic scenario where we keep businesses afloat, we keep workers from cutting back dramatically on their demand for goods and services, and we are able to reopen reasonably soon, right? Which will give us a tremendous boost. I think in that case, we may be able to get back to trend a little faster, but obviously the numbers are very large and worrisome.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how it goes.
And after we do, or I mean, if we do, and hopefully afterward, we recover. Do you think we'll see any permanent damage to the economy from this virus, or any permanent changes to the way state economic programs are structured?
Well, one thing I would really hope is that we use this opportunity to just build a little more state capacity when it comes just to the delivery of these kinds of relief plans. I found it extremely frustrating that on basically every aspect of this of the policy response that does not go through the Federal Reserve, because I think that's really the only functional part of the federal government at this point. We run into all kinds of constraints constantly. We cannot deliver even simple cash payments to people quickly, right? There's going to be people receiving paper checks months after the original bill passed. State unemployment agencies have been incapable of signing people up for unemployment benefits within a week or 2 weeks from them being laid off, which is obviously not helpful. And a lot of it is simply because they're running software that was written in the 70s, and they don't employ people anymore who know how to adjust them. In fact, the reason why we're adding $600 in weekly benefits to unemployment benefits now, instead of making it depend on how much money you were making beforehand, but being more generous, is because that's easier to code, right? And so we now have a bunch of people who are making more money of unemployment benefits than they were making in wages beforehand. That obviously provides terrible incentives, both now, because companies will not be able to maintain them and pay them through the payroll protection loans, and maybe a couple months from now when Amazon wants to hire delivery staff. And so that's not good, and that's just a matter of us having a bunch of state unemployment agencies that run outdated systems. On the business side, we're relying on the regular financial system because we apparently have no good way to deliver funds to business directly. on the state and local level, I don't think we have a good sense of how much money state and local governments need right now. And so all of these things are, you just need to invest money in better IT systems. And, I think it's worth doing that because we're currently spending so much more money on a lot of these programs than we would really need to if we could target better, that, an effort to build up capacity, it will easily pay for itself in the next downturn. Right? If take the payroll protection program, which we have discussed already, we're reimbursing 100% of payroll at every business that says they need the money. Right? If we could make those numbers depend on how much you've lost in revenue, that would immediately save us, hundreds of billions of dollars, I would guess. And so I think that hopefully that's one thing that we will work to improve as we make it out of the current crisis. Then obviously there are questions about what's going to happen to the structure of the economy. I think that's a little too early to say. It wouldn't totally surprise me if people become a little more comfortable working from home. Though at the same time, I do think that a lot of people are going to miss being at the, having people around during the day. But yeah, and then there are industries that are just completely devastated, and I don't know how quickly they're going to come back, like movie theaters, bars, restaurants. I don't know, it's going to be tough if for industries that will be shut down, fully or almost fully for months on end. And so I don't know how much of that's going to bounce back. Then I think thirdly, and this is more on the international side, there will be a call, I think, for onshoring some supply chains, right? Certainly on the medical side. I would worry that, it's going to be what we usually do, where we're basically solving the previous crisis as opposed to the next one. Yeah, because what are the odds we'll need ventilators again? They're probably
right.
It's probably fairly limited, and so we're gonna make a bunch. We're gonna make more of those in all the Western countries. I don't know if that's ever gonna pay off, but maybe we should be a little more risk averse there. I think it'll be better to try and build more diverse supply chains as opposed to directly onshoring, because obviously the cost of onshoring a lot of manufacturing activity will be that things will just be costlier, right? So we'll be poorer, and that too will make it harder for us to respond to whatever the next downturn or crisis is. And so I'm a little worried there.
Certainly, all things considered, this has just been such a hectic month, and the economy is reeling, but some experts I've seen have predicted that we may see the peak of the disease in early to mid-May. And based on your research and the response we've had so far, do you think we have reasons to be optimistic? And is there hope we can mitigate the economic effects of the virus?
Yeah, I think most of the forecasts that we have seen from a lot of the investment banks, I think, are a little too optimistic. I think their models have a lot of symmetry built into them. And so if you have a sudden big downturn, then you bounce back pretty quickly, pretty easily. I think that may be a little too optimistic, because I just don't think we'll be able to reopen fully anytime soon, right? I think there'll be restrictions on big sports events. Do we think that aviation is going to be back in its normal shape in September? I mean, I doubt it. And same for hotels. Despite all the measures we're trying to take, we will inevitably see bankruptcies. I don't know, the oil and gas industry, for example. I mean, they're one of the bigger users of the PPP program, but obviously it's in shambles right now because no one wants to buy their product. And the same for aviation, hotels. I know the mayor of Las Vegas would really like to reopen, but obviously people aren't going to go to Vegas now, even if they reopen. And so I do think there's a limit to what you could do. So I think that some of those forecasts are a little too optimistic. But for sure, the moment we have the public health threat under control, at least to some extent, we'll immediately see a big bounce back, right? Because people will be able to do things again, and that in and of itself will be a massive stimulus to the economy. yeah. So
All right. Well, I think that about covers it for all my questions. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Veuger, for joining me today.
yeah,
It's
for sure.
certainly been informative for me and hopefully for the people who are listening. And I hope you can stay safe and healthy over the coming weeks.
Well, you too. You stay safe.